we are on and work on the traditional lands of the Indigenous people, Inuit, First Nations, and Métis of Canada. We honor the ancestry, heritages, and gifts of the Indigenous people, and we give thanks to them. I acknowledge that I am located on Treaty 8 territory, which is the traditional territory just north of Athabasca. I've lived here for my entire life, and I am very thankful and fortunate to call this place my home. If you have a land acknowledgement you would like to put in the chat box, feel free to do so. And I would like to just take a minute to thank everyone for joining us here today, our guests from Memorial University through our partnership, as well as our graduate students and any other AU students. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. This is part 2 of a 5-part series that we co-host with the library regarding developing research. So this one is Keeping Organized as You Search, and we have the library and the Right Site folks here today going to do this presentation for us. So we are recording, so everyone is aware of that, and the recording will be available later on the YouTube site, correct? The library YouTube site is normally where it gets posted.
Yes.
And we can throw a link in the chat for that as well.
Mm-hmm.
For people that are just kind of popping in, I wanted to let everyone know that we haven't enabled mics and cameras. Those are disabled for the duration of the meeting, just to kind of keep background noise quiet. We have a lot of folks joining us today. But if at any time you have a question, you can use the chat box, the chat feature. You can also raise your hand when the floor is open for question, and I can give you access to your mic and camera. So I think that's it for me, and I will hand the floor over to our presenters. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Great. Thank you so much, Crystal. So yes, hi everyone. Welcome to our webinar on Keeping Organized as You Search. As Crystal said, we have time for questions at the end, but also feel free to post those in the chat box as we go, and we will try to answer them as we go as well. Okay, and we do have a handout. I believe Crystal sent that to you as well via email. It's a handout that has links to everything that we'll be discussing today. So just to get to some introductions. So my name is Jennifer Rempel. I'm the Information Literacy and Resource Access Librarian here at AU Library. And now I will let Sarah Jean and Robin introduce themselves as well.
Hi everyone, I'm Robin Staubs and I'm the Research Data Management Librarian at AU.
Hi Robin.
Hey everybody, I am Sarah Jean Watt, the Right Site Coordinator. And thanks for coming today. I'll just give you a couple of tips for the meeting. If you would like to turn on live captions, you can do that by clicking More. It has the 3 dots icon, and then scroll down and click Language and Speech, then turn on live captions. And if you'd like to mute the chat notifications, then also under More, choose Settings, and then Mute Notifications and/or Don't Show Chat Bubbles.
Great, thanks Sarah Jean. Okay, so we'll get started. And before we do that, though, I do have a little activity for us all, and it looks like the PowerPoint is not there. But we do have a link to the. Oh, sorry. we'll go into what we're going to discuss in the agenda first. We do have a quick activity on the Jamboard here. If you look at the chat, you can see there's a Jamboard. For Google, you can just create post-it notes there. So what we're asking is, what do you already do to organize your research? Most of us are doing something already, presumably, like we're not just flying into it without a plan. So if you want to go to that link, you can create a sticky note in the Jamboard. There's a little button, or there's a note there saying that. On the left-hand side is a piece of paper. So we do have some answers already. So some people have a very long Word document, spreadsheets, more effective folder management. Yes, and a lot of this we will be covering as well. So I will give you about 30 seconds to put up your sticky note, and then we'll continue. And we can also we'll also check back later about our answers. I think I'll just share my screen really quickly so we can see our sticky notes all together. So I hope we can all see our screen. So we have some answers here. Yeah, so some people are using Zotero. You're still figuring it out. Yeah. Yeah, writing author's name and year, beginning of the file. Yes, good. So everyone is doing something, it looks like. Whether it's file organizing, using spreadsheets, Word, excellent. Still figuring it out. Yeah, no problem at all. Okay, so I think that's good for now, and I will go back to our slide. Thank you all for contributing, and now we'll just skip ahead to our agenda, what we'll be talking about today. So of course, we're going to talk about time management with focus on assignment calculators. We're going to talk also, again, about search journals in Word and Excel, and setting search histories and alerts. We're going to get more into organization as well. So this will include folder organization and file naming conventions. And then we'll go into note-taking. That's very important as well as research planning, and mind mapping, also useful techniques. And then finally, at the end, we will conclude with where to go for help. And now I'll turn it over to Sarah Jean, who'll start us off with time management.
Thanks, Jen. What I want to do is just share some tools and strategies for planning your time during research and writing. So first I'll focus on shorter projects for coursework, like term papers, and then I'll focus on longer projects like theses and dissertations. An assignment calculator is a tool, if you haven't come across it yet, that gives you a plan or schedule of the research and writing process broken down into steps, and each step has its own due date. So all you have to do is enter your start date and your end date. So the start date is whatever day you want to start. Doesn't have to be today. It could be in the future. And similarly, the end date doesn't need to be the actual due date of your paper. Ideally, it should actually be earlier to allow yourself extra time, especially if you want to submit your draft to the right site. And also keep in mind that things can come up that are unexpected. So that can be a good idea to give yourself extra time at the end. If you would like to get feedback from a RightSite coach, then leave at least 3 business days to receive feedback from your coach. And I'll talk more about the RightSite at the end of the webinar. So now I'll talk about some assignment calculators with different features, so you can choose which one you think would be most helpful for you. And the links to these are on our handout. So this first one is an assignment calculator from Simon Fraser University. And it breaks down the steps for you into recommended percentages of time to spend through the period. So it identifies the day you should begin each step. For example, it might recommend 20% of the time for research, start on this day, and 10% for outlining, start on this day, and so on. This assignment calculator also allows you to import the first day of each step to your Outlook calendar, and the instructions on how to do this are on our handout. Now, be sure to interpret each calendar event it enters as the day you begin that step. You might want to manually change the event to recur each day until the next step begins. But remember to schedule in break days. And the second one that I'll talk about is the University of Toronto calculator, which is useful because it allows you to choose between several different types of assignments. It has literature reviews, as well as annotated bibliography, presentation, and even graduate school application. And similar to the first one, you'll receive recommended steps, but different types of assignments have slightly different steps. So this assignment calculator not only gives you a recommended timeline, it also gives a guideline for how to approach the particular type of assignment. With this U of T calculator, you can also generate a PDF that provides the steps and the dates. I personally found it more useful to manually input the dates into my Outlook calendar because that's what I use. But either way, these tools can be a starting place for planning when you're starting your assignment. And they can definitely help keep you on track with the steps of the writing process. You can also find a link to our writing process webpage on the handout. And that page lists these and lots of other tools for every step of the writing process. Now, if you're very visual or tactile, you may also want to print a blank monthly calendar and write down which step of your assignment you should be working on each day. Excel has a template for this. I went and I tried to find one online. There's lots. But then I thought, well, I have this program. I'll just use it. And the template you see here is called Blank Monthly Calendar in Excel. And instructions for how to find it are on our handout, just to make it easy. Alternatively, you can print your calendar from Outlook with a specified date range and 1 month per page. And we've also given instructions for that on our handout. Okay, so on to the longer projects. Even if you're doing a thesis or a dissertation, there's an assignment calculator for that. the University of BC's thesis calculator allows you to choose a master's or PhD option to get tailored results. Their steps are broken down by semester. Detailed steps are given not only for writing, but also suggested professional development and self-care. And this time you can sign up for email reminders, which could be useful if you're more apt to check your email than your calendar. One downside is that it is geared toward UBC students, and many links or suggested steps are relevant only to them. However, you might be able to find similar resources at AU, and if you're not sure, then just drop us an email. I'll put my email in the chat shortly, and we'll do our best to help you track down what you need. Now, at the graduate level, you may also want to try the University of Minnesota's dissertation calculator. It gives very detailed strategies for each step. The steps include developing research methodology, reviewing the literature, analyzing data, and writing. And like the Simon Fraser calculator that we discussed at the beginning, each step is broken down by percentage time to spend, accompanied by a due date for each step. Now, I also suggest maybe trying a blank calendar in Outlook devoted completely to this one longer project. This could be a good idea to help keep you focused on the various steps of one project at a time. The assignment calculator will suggest the time periods for each step. Then you can put them into Outlook, signed in with your AU email address. And here you can see I created a calendar with different steps. This is with the University of Minnesota's dissertation calculator. I color-coded each step so that I can quickly see where one ends and another begins. For example, it shows in yellow when to begin the literature review starting in April, and then you can see it stretch through to June. Our handout contains instructions for how to create and print a yearly calendar that looks like this one in Outlook. You can print a hard copy or you could print it to PDF. For more detail of what to do each day, you might still choose to use a calendar devoted to this one particular project, but you can overlap it with your regular calendar if you'd like to do that. And you can see that here. So this makes any entry onto the graduate writing calendar the different color, gray, then entries onto the regular calendar, which are green. So you can see the gray and the green together, and they may overlap. All right, well, that's all I have for time management right now, but I'm going to put a link in the chat to Menti, and I'm going to ask you this question. What is the benefit of using an assignment calculator? So you can click the link in the chat, or you can answer at menti.com with the code 4673779. But the link will take you directly there. So what is the benefit of using an assignment calculator? Is it breaking the writing process into steps, giving you a schedule to input in your calendar, manage your time while writing, or all of the above? And I'm not sure if I can share the results because we have the screen up, but it looks like everyone's pretty much in agreement that it's all of the above. So I agree. Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking.
Oh, and I'm seeing my screen is not showing the results, but this is the correct answer, yes, all of the above.
And you can take over to talk about journaling your search.
Yes, that's right. Okay, so I do got to skip ahead a little bit here. Apologies. Again, thank you, Sarah Jean. Very great time management help. So I'm going to be talking about search journals. I will turn my camera on. I've been having internet issues as well. Hopefully that won't get in the way. If need be, I can turn it off. But all right. Back to our presentation. Okay, so as you search, of course, it's very helpful to keep a document or search journal of the terms you've used, how you found the results, and notable articles and citations that you might want to revisit. So I'll go over how you might use either a Word document or Excel to journal your searches. And of course, some of you already are doing that, which is awesome, but this might help as well. So here's an example of a Word document. It's a little bit hard to see, but we've kind of cut out the relevant part that you can see here of the search journal. This is a really quick and easy way to do it. Word is really easy, not a lot of formatting, right? So the main components of this search journal, of this document, include information about the topic. So what are you actually researching? You want to include the databases that you searched in. So the searches that you've tried, the results you found, as well as relevant articles. And unfortunately, I can't make it bigger. I don't have Zoom capability on the screen, unfortunately. We can probably send you the PowerPoint later on as well if you want to check that, or you can watch the recording later on as well. It is hard to see, but basically it's just a list of materials that we're including here, or a list of the information, databases, searches, and results. So we do recommend for articles copying the entire citation. You can see there at the bottom, again, kind of, I've copied and pasted the entire citation for the article so that you can find it again later on. And in this case of another article here, we've added the abstract as well. In this instance, the title was not very descriptive, and so we wanted to copy-paste the abstract just so you have a reminder there of what the actual article was about and why you saved it. You can also, if you feel like it, highlight parts of the abstract that you've copied and pasted, or add notes to how the article might be relevant to your search. So basically, you're just creating a big document and listing all of the sources and where you found them. So looking at this a little bit closer, right, I identify where, when, and what I searched and what's missing. So in this case, I've made a little highlight here. It's not, the citation was copied and pasted really quickly. I didn't format it properly. Just a note to myself that I still need to do that. But I've also made notes about what results I got from my searches and how I might want to mix that search up later on. So here, you will be doing a lot of searching typically on your assignments, looking in different places, looking at different resources. So when you're journaling your searches, you'll be reading abstracts and full articles. So you do want to make sure that you have notes on individual resources, and then you might want to make a large note and then make a short list of selected resources for your current assignment. So you're making a big journal, and then you're reading your resources, you're making your notes, and then you're further refining your results to selected resources that you want to use. So as we did mention, there are many ways to consider journaling. We did just show you sort of a Word document. This journal example was created in Excel. Again, kind of small, but I believe Sarah Jean, thank you. Sarah Jean has, she's more experienced than me with this, so she has the magnify slide option there for you. So thanks, Sarah Jean. Okay, yeah, so this example here is a template. You can copy this into Excel or Google Sheets. We did, I believe on the handout, create a link to a Google Sheet that you could use for yourself. You can download it and then use it yourself here for your own research. But basically what we're doing here is we're identifying the research topic. In this case, it's hand hygiene in hospital workers. And then we want to separate each concept of the research topic into a list of different synonyms. So in this case, it's hard to see, but you have hand washing, hand hygiene is concept one, etc. So you're basically breaking it down into discrete concepts and listing your keywords for each concept, because when you're doing your research, of course, you need to use a variety of terms usually. Okay, and then lower down in our search journal, we've kind of considered ways to combine terms using and or. These are Boolean operators. We don't have time to go into search strategy in detail right now, but if you do need help developing your search, coming up with Boolean search strategies, that's basically using ands and ors. So hand hygiene or hand washing, and nurses or hospital workers, that kind of thing, right? So you want to keep track of the kind of searches you're doing, the operators you're using, and your search strings in your journals as well. And again, more details can be found in the link from our handout. Okay, so you also again want to document the databases that you used and the results you found. So you might search in CINAHL or PubMed or both, right? And you want to distinguish where you were doing your searches and the results that you got when you did your searches. So you can also make comments about the merits of your search. For example, did this search result in too many items or not enough items? What keywords worked best, which ones didn't, right? And you also will want to create a separate document for individual articles and other resources. So you want to have a big search journal and then separate documents when you get into analyzing individual articles and sources. Okay, you can also create search histories and alerts. So various databases will allow you to find your search history or to save it. And some databases and tools do allow you to set up search alerts. We won't go, again, no details here about individual ones, but for example, Google Scholar, you can set up individual histories and search alerts. You need to create a personal account. So for example, if you're using EBSCO databases, like Academic Search Complete or ProQuest collections, like dissertations and theses, you will need to set up individual private accounts, personal accounts in those databases, and then you can set up search alerts. So there are different ways to do this. For example, from an EBSCO database, so EBSCO is a vendor that provides our Discover search tool on the homepage as well as various other databases. If you create an EBSCO account, this is separate from your library account, it's a personal account. When you select search history from your search page, you can then see all of the searches you've done based on those terms and the results garnered from those searches. So this is kind of an automated way to save your search history within a particular database, right? So this search history is specific to Discover and EBSCO collections. So that's how that works. But it's another option for tracking your searches that way. Okay, and you can also rerun those searches. So if you want to save your search links, you have to so these links are only saved when you're actively searching. If you want to create a persistent link to your search results page, you can do that in the EBSCO collection. This is an example here too. So if you look on the right, you can see that search button or the share button. That share button produces this use permalink. Again, I'm kind of squinting myself because you can't see it, but it's very small. You can use the permalink to share a link back to those search results. So that can be very useful as well. And again, some databases do allow you to set up alerts for particular searches. So if something new is published in the research area that you're studying, this is probably particularly useful for graduate students or people doing doctorates. If you need to keep up on the latest publications, Google Scholar is particularly useful for this because it's outside of the library in a way. So this example my colleague Joanna set up, if you have a Google account or a Gmail account, you can do a search in Google Scholar. If you have a search that you want to keep up with, you can set up alerts that way. You can see there's a Create Alert button available in Google Scholar. So you will get emails whenever topics on your search come up. Okay. Do like using Google Scholar in many ways. Oh, sorry, I skipped that. Because there are a wide variety of publications. So Google Scholar is a bit trickier to search, but it's extremely useful for keeping up with the latest publications. Okay, so now Robin will go on to talking about organizing your research.
Thanks, Jen. I'm going to try with my camera on, but please flag me down if I start lagging a bit. I think the network issues have resolved here, though. All right, so in regards to organizing your research, I'm going to talk a bit about citation management software, and then Jen is going to speak to folders and file naming. So I'm going to throw a link in the chat here to our library guide on citation management tools. And we'll also be having an in-depth citation management session on January 31st, so be sure to tune in for that. You can register for that at the next link I'm going to throw in the chat. It's right here. So briefly, citation management software allows you to save and organize literature as you are searching. It can also be used to help you cite as you write and to generate bibliographies. There are entire recorded webinars available in that library guide that I just dropped in the chat, and they're linked in our handout. So I'm going to focus in on citation management as it relates to keeping you organized. If you have any questions about using the tools or want to learn more about how they can help you cite as you write or generate bibliographies, please don't hesitate to reach out to the library. So on this slide is an example. I've got an article I found doing a search for research data management. In the top right of my browser, I can click my Zotero add-on to save the article. And then a window comes up letting me know where in Zotero it's saving to. In this case, it's a folder I've titled Researcher Perspectives. I need to click for the animation on the slide, please, Jen. So this, no, Oh, that was correct. Yeah. So that article is then saved in my Zotero library. So this image on the screen is of the library itself, where the article now shows up. You can see the saved record of the item, that there's a PDF copy and a snapshot of the Science Direct website where I got the article from. And now if you click twice there we go, the little red thing on the screen. You can use the Notes tab to add notes on the item. So for example, you might want to make a note of where you got it from, or if you're using a search journal like Jen just went over, you can add a note with a link maybe connecting to that search journal. I'll also say that if you're using items like print books, you can manually add a record into Zotero so that you don't lose track of those books either. So in this example, I'm showing how I can organize the items I have saved. On screen is an example of articles and chapters of books that I have sorted by course they were collected for, and then I've created subfolders for each assignment in the course. I can also tag resources I've saved in order to make them easier to find, because you can search on those tags, and the tags are located in the bottom left panel. You can also click on any tag in that panel, and then only items in your current folder that have been assigned that tag will be displayed. So it can really help you narrow things down within your organization system. And the little window that just flew in is a running list of tags that I have created. So I keep that list just in an Excel sheet. And that example is for a project I was beginning on research data management. So as I read more articles, I can add more tags to my list, but it helps me remember what I meant by the tags I've created. Okay. Items in your library don't have to be in one folder. So pictured on screen here is an article on the curation of qualitative research, and it's about developing curriculum for teaching that type of curation. I placed the article in 2 different folders, one for data curation and one for educational materials. This doesn't create extra copies of the article. It only exists in my Zotero library once, but it can be added to as many folders and subfolders as I like by dragging and dropping. So this allows me to organize papers by course or assignment as well as by topic without having to save duplicate copies into different folders. If you don't want to use citation management software, you can create a naming system for folders on your computer. You should be consistent in how you name folders and files within them and document those naming conventions. This can be as simple as creating a plain text README file to include in the top level folder that explains how you name files and how you organize them. If you want to include items in more than one folder, you can create a shortcut in Windows, or it's called an alias on a Mac. Links to instructions are included in the handout. Jen's going to now talk to us a bit about naming conventions for these folders and documents.
Great. Thanks, Robin. All right, so yes, it is good to think about what files you keep on your computer and how you organize them maybe in your head. Like what kind of things do you have to organize in your life? And this could apply to anything, like your personal life. Do you have files related to your kids or your health or your work, your taxes, that kind of thing? For the most part, we're organizing files in some fashion, even in our daily lives. One thing that could be useful for you is to organize by semester. And when I was a student, this was helpful as well. It really depends on the kinds of files you need to organize and what organization system makes the most sense for you. Again, it's about consistency. But again, folder naming is pretty important because you want to be able to go back and find the things that you have found that were helpful. Of course, if your files don't have helpful names within folders as well, it's also going to be hard to find things. In regards to file names, you do just want to make sure you're consistent. So, for example, you also want to use descriptive names, something that's more clear. So, for example, the author's last name, maybe also a word that describes what the article is about or why it's relevant, for example. Again, you want to be consistent with your formats as well. So I often will include a date of publication with my research that I'm finding because I want to make sure it's an up-to-date article, or maybe the author has written more than one article about this topic in different years, right? So you want to be consistent with this as well. So you want to maybe do year, month, day, just by the year, etc. The important thing is, again, to be consistent, right? In your file names, just technically speaking, you don't really want to keep spaces. Sometimes they're not readable in other formats. So you want to use underscores or use capitals to differentiate between words. You don't want to have spaces in your file names usually, right? You also want to keep the names of your files as short as possible. Again, avoid repetition because it's less confusing that way. And again, just be consistent with your file naming. So we did have some links about file names adapted from the University of Illinois and Leicester. So I believe those are also in the handout that you would have received. And if you didn't receive the handout, I did see in the chat there, people who registered later might not have received that handout that was sent out yesterday. So you can maybe ask Crystal, and thank you, Crystal, for sending those out as well. Okay, so we're just looking at some naming conventions here. So, for example, we have an English paper. There's some effective and ineffective file names. So just taking a look, in terms of time, we kind of press for time, so we won't go into an activity here. But we want to make sure that our file names are clear and consistent. So in this case, English 101 paper draft may be useful, but if you have more than one English 101 paper, you probably will want to give the file a bit of a clearer name. But in this case, we are reminding ourselves what the paper is about. It's for English 101, that kind of thing. So we want to make sure that we don't, if there's two versions of it as well, like draft 1, draft 2, that we're distinguishing that way. Again, the problem here with the Johnson thing is we're using the author's last name, but it's not clear about what it is. So I have a notes document about the paper, and I have the PDFs. The author, Johnson, wrote 2 articles that I'm citing. But if I'm distinguishing them by Johnson 1 and Johnson 2, that's not very clear, right? So I want to make sure I'm putting a word or to give me a clue about what the paper is about. So Johnson wrote a paper about citing sources, so I put Johnson citing. Johnson also wrote a paper about organizing, so I put Johnson organizing, that kind of thing, right? You just want to make sure you're being clear for yourself. How am I going to find this file again later on? So again, some more or less effective strategies here. We have a list just side by side. In this case, English 101 paper. It's somewhat descriptive, but not clear enough. If I'm writing a paper about Margaret Atwood, I would say English 101, Atwood paper version 1, version 2, etc. And as I mentioned before, with the Johnson paper, you want to make sure you're distinguishing here what each thing is. And same with the last example here, Smith, 2015 Nursing Theory. I'm including the name, date, hint about what the article is. And again, it's up to you. You want to choose a style that works for you. Just make sure you're consistent and make sure that these are descriptive titles so you can find things again later on. It's all about your own convenience, right? Okay, so it's about file names, and now we'll move on, and Sarah Jean will discuss note-taking.
Thanks, Jen. The effective note-taking strategies I'll discuss include reading actively, using templates to take your notes and engage with the material, and Robin will also weigh in on this one, and knowing how and when to quote, paraphrase, or summarize while you're note-taking to prepare for drafting your paper. So when preparing to take notes effectively, it is really important to read actively for your understanding. Reading actively means that first, you continually think critically about what you're reading, you reflect on what you've read, and think about questions that you have about this source you're reading. And second, use strategies to determine the source's main findings. So when working with journal articles, for example, start by reading the abstract to determine if the article might be useful. You can determine the article's conclusions from the abstract before you read it to help you understand it as you read it as well. And third, scan the article, reading the headings to determine relevance and previewing the article's main points. At the same time, scan for keywords that relate to your topic. Watch for them to pop up off the page. When reading books, use the table of contents, headings, and index to help you find relevant material. And in any text, the introduction and conclusion or discussion can also be useful portions to read and reread to help gain understanding. Now, you should also periodically take breaks from reading and summarize in your own words what you have read to be sure that you understand it. So just do this to yourself. Try not to just read straight through, but think about it as you go. Take those breaks and think about it. And then once you're done reading, spend a few minutes explaining the main points to someone, an online study buddy, a spouse, a friend, a colleague, your kid, and that will force you to put the ideas in your own words and ensure your understanding and prepare you for taking notes. Finally, part of active reading is engaging physically with the text. You can start out by highlighting, underlining, circling to identify main points and keywords or phrases. Write your questions, your thoughts, your observations in the margins. And if you find your brain doing word association and outside concepts or related words are popping into your brain, note those in the margins as well. If there's a visual way you can present some of the information to help yourself summarize it, you could try that. For example, maybe you can put a flow chart of related ideas on a page and then attach that to the article. You could also make a diagram of a particular concept that you want to remember, or even create a doodle that represents some important information. By doing this, you're interacting with the source physically, like I mentioned, and that helps with comprehension and engagement. You can engage physically with the text even if you don't print the article by using a PDF reader's highlighting and commenting functions, or by using a citation management system like Zotero. Here I used Zotero to highlight different types of information I was searching for in different colors. So for example, I used blue for key terms and definitions, yellow for points on my research topic, and purple for super important points on my research topic. I also added a comment in the left-hand side questioning the point in yellow so that I would remember to clarify it when I was taking my notes later. So what you see on the left-hand side there is the comments and highlights viewed in Zotero on that sidebar to the left of where the article appears. However, there are some benefits to using a PDF editor instead of or alongside Zotero. Here I used the browser Microsoft Edge. It's another great free option that allows you to highlight in several colors as well as draw and add typed text. This is useful for showing relationships between points, which you can see with my arrows, and adding further emphasis, which you can see with my attempt at a blue star there. You can also add text wherever you want it on the page. The edits you make in a PDF editor will also appear in Zotero as long as they're reading from the same file. So to use a PDF editor alongside Zotero, start from your Zotero library. You would right-click on the article and choose Show File to see the file in its folder outside of Zotero. And then to open the PDF file in an editor like Edge, you would right-click on it, choose Open With, and then choose the PDF editor. And it should open, and you could use the annotation tools like in the bar shown here. Now just be sure to save that article in order to keep the annotations, and then they should appear the next time you use Zotero. Robin also taught me that you can change the default PDF editor used by Zotero under the edit options. You choose Preferences and then General. And you'll see a setting that says Open PDFs using ... And there you can choose the editor like Edge or Adobe, whatever your preference is. And there are instructions for this on our handout. Here's an example of a mind map or relationship map from HEART. You can do this through any approach that works for you for a single article, but you might find it even more useful for exploring the ideas you glean from multiple articles. This can help guide your idea or thesis development. And we'll see another way to deal with information from multiple sources at once a little later on. But I did want to show you that when working with an article to understand its contents, you don't have to treat the information in a linear fashion. Playing with it in a visual fashion can help you engage with it and thus understand it more comprehensively. And Jen will also show you some other ideas for mind mapping later. Now, it's recommended to keep a working bibliography of items you read during your research. A bibliography differs from a references or works cited page because it includes works used during research, but not necessarily referenced in your writing. So it's a good idea to use both a bibliography and a references page. The bibliography would include all items you've consulted. even if they don't seem directly relevant to your argument. You might have read them for background information, an additional perspective, or a wider scope. It's possible that that source could come in handy later, so it's good to keep its bibliographic information in case you want to refer back. Unfortunately, if you use a citation management system like Zotero, it does most of the work for you. So be sure to also include additional details of where you found the source, like the call number of a book from the library you obtained it from, even the name of a friend you borrowed the book from, or the website that housed a certain report in case you need to find it again. And be sure to record the complete citation of each source you use for your writing. Don't fall into the trap of thinking that references are done at the end of the project, just because the references page comes at the end of the document. You really need to record that information all the way along through your research process, and it'll make your life much easier later. So when I begin a paper, I like to create the title page and the references page. This is what works for me. Every time I cite a source, I add the complete reference on the references page. And you can copy it directly from Zotero, which you can see in Figure 1 on this slide. And if you're not using Zotero, you could also try a tool like MyBib to help you create your references smoothly in any style. We've linked to MyBib on our handout. Now we'll look at some templates you can use to help guide your note-taking as you research, and these can be accessed through links on our handout. Robin has provided our first template.
Thanks, Sarah Jean. This template is geared toward in-depth reading of an item. I'm going to explain what I use each section for, but you don't have to use all of the sections. You want to think about what is most relevant to you, and an empty copy of this template is linked in our handout. So for the tags section, those match the tags I create in my citation management system. I like to assign my own tags, but you can also look at the keywords assigned to the article. They're usually listed underneath the abstract. For the quick description, I put in 1 to 2 sentences of what the article is about, and I usually fill that out last after I've read the article. For key takeaways, I also put 1 to 2 key points for me and what I'm currently working on. So I fill this in at the end as well after I've read everything. And while the quick description describes the article itself, this section is more for me and why I think I want to use this article for a particular project or why I think it's an important work. For the terms section, I include key terms defined in the article. And for important points, I put in the author's key points. I tend to summarize in this section as I read and then edit it after to just have the key points there. In the method section, if it's a research article, I note down how the research was designed. For example, whether it was an experiment, survey, interview, or some other form of research method. And then my other of interest section is other points, critiques, or interesting connections I make as I read. And some of those may end up in the key takeaways when I'm done, or I might move them into the follow-up section. I have a 4AU section in this template because for my current project, I need to be able to relate what I'm reading to the work I do at AU. So you might want to have a section for your own particular assignment or your own particular research project. I sometimes summarize this section into the key takeaways later, but use it as a place to make longer running notes as I'm reading. And the reason I do that, moving things into those top 2 sections later, is to ensure that the things that are most relevant for me, that quick description of the paper and why I want to use it, are at the very top of my notes for when I refer back to them later. And the last section is follow-up, which is where I put references or concepts I want to come back to or look up later. So you can see on the right side of the screen, there's a filled out version versus the empty one on the left. And now I'll turn it back over to Sarah Jean.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Robin. So here's another template to give you an idea of how to gather evidence, data, or quotes that you want to discuss in your paper. And I want to thank the student who suggested that I change the format of the template and use Excel. So that's what I've done here. So to begin, place the citation in the first row, then summarize the main idea beneath it. The main points identified in the next row will also usually consist of summarizing, while you can go into more detail in the supporting details row with paraphrases and direct quotes. Supporting details might include evidence, findings, data, maybe sentences of analysis or discussion, and memorable wording or definitions. You should also include a comment section, which you'll see near the bottom, for your own thoughts and questions. And we recommend further differentiating the types of notes with a key that identifies different fonts used. For example, you could use italics to identify paraphrases, quotation marks, of course, to identify direct quotes, and bold for your own comments. The use of different colored fonts could be useful as well. This comparison template, adapted from HEART, is designed for multiple sources at once, which is particularly useful for literature reviews and in-depth research papers. It allows you to group sources by topic and explore their similarities and differences. This in turn gives you a way to structure your paper or literature review by subtopic or theme. So choose a subtopic or theme and place it in the key concept row. Each column will be used for a different article, identified by the author and date listed in the top row. You can change the category names in the first column as suits your own research, just like Robin mentioned on the other template. This is just to give you a starting place, and then fill out each column for the source listed at the top. This way you can understand how different sources compare in their findings on this subtopic or theme. And again, I'll mention here the feedback we had from a student on the usefulness of setting up an Excel sheet to build your own template. Now, to keep your notes organized and effective, it's important to know when to quote versus when to paraphrase, especially when you're getting closer to the drafting phase of writing. Your writing should be made up mostly of paraphrases because it's your writing. It should be mostly your words. But there are certain times when quoting, which is using someone else's exact words, can be useful in a research paper. So use quotes where wording is very memorable or important. The author's words should be unique and unusual and get their point across concisely. Quoting might be useful when defining a term because the wording cannot easily be changed without altering the meaning. It's also pertinent to quote when you want to respond to or critique someone else's exact words. That's really common when doing a close reading of a novel or engaging in a critical debate in your field. But overall, try to minimize use of quotes in a research paper. And when you do quote, choose the part of the quote that's most relevant. It could even just be a word or two, maybe a short phrase. A short quote can be embedded within a sentence in which your voice is prominent, paraphrasing the rest of the idea, or analyzing the short phrase. So a quote or any piece of evidence never speaks for itself. It's up to you to explain or analyze that quote in the context of your own paper. As a writer, you've chosen the quote for a reason. So while note-taking, be sure to record that reason, just so that you remember when you come back to it to write your paper why you wrote that quote down. I've fallen victim to forgetting this myself. And when you do quote, ensure that you record the page number as well, and always put your quotes in double quotation marks to signal that they're the exact words of the source's author. It's also important to take the time to paraphrase and summarize effectively when taking notes. So this will help to capture a clear and complete understanding so that you remember when you return to your notes later. And the main difference between a paraphrase and summary is that a paraphrase is of a specific wording or passage, maybe a sentence or two up to a short paragraph, while a summary is to identify and record the main idea or thesis, or the main points that support the thesis of that source. So when you paraphrase, you may use a signal phrase referring to a specific short statement, like Baldwin states. When you summarize, you may use a more general signal phrase that captures the main idea, like Baldwin argues. Like quoting, you'll actually only paraphrase when you want to record the meaning of a specific portion or passage of the source, a specific statement. So again, signaling the beginning of the paraphrase with something like Baldwin states. And when you're working with several sources, much of the work you do to collect your notes will be summarizing. It's essential to record the main idea or argument of each source you read so that you document the context of your other notes. Main points, which are pieces of support for the argument, are also important to allow you to follow the logic of the author's argument or findings later. You can also summarize specific passages by stating the idea of the passage in fewer words. Paraphrases come in with specific details, like pieces of evidence, findings, data, and the author's analysis or discussion. Just like with a quote, always record the page number of a paraphrase so that you can find the original later. The same can be said for a summary if summarizing a particular portion of the text. Now, as Jen mentioned, we are getting a little bit short on time. So I'm going to be covering more about paraphrasing in an upcoming webinar. I'm going to put the link to register for that in the chat. And I think we can maybe go right to, actually we'll skip the Menti because it asks a tough question about this part that I'm going to skip. We can go to Jen for research planning.
Right, sounds good. Thanks, Sarah Jean. Yes, we are running a little bit short on time, so I will try to get through this a little bit. So we had a true or false portion, which we will unfortunately skip. So I'll talk about research planning. Okay, so to formulate a research plan, the first thing you want to do, of course, is pose your topic as a question. So as you read, think about your stance on your topic or the angle at which you would like to examine it. Of course, you're going to narrow these ideas down to a focused thesis topic as you continue to gather evidence from your research. So as you proceed to develop your thesis topic, you want to think about the resources you're going to need. So will you need books, journal articles, theses and dissertations perhaps, newspaper articles, policy documents, etc., and where you're going to find these resources. And then you're going to want to plan a research journal. So this was adapted from the University of New Hampshire. Basically, we have a link there, I believe, in the handout about effective planning. Okay, so when you want to do some pre-reading before you start digging into in-depth research. This can really help you to get a handle on what you're looking for in general, especially if you're new to the topic. So as you do your pre-reading, it can also help to create a mind map of your ideas, essentially brainstorming. So a lot of students will come to our reference librarians, Joanna and myself, with assignment topics that are like women in ancient Greece. And so that's a huge topic. So you do want to figure out where do you want to go with that? What do you want to say about women in ancient Greece, right? So you might want to focus on women's work, feminism, topics like that, day-to-day life, relationships, religion, that kind of thing. So you want to think about your topic as a whole, do some background reading, and then say, what do I actually want to do with this topic? So here's an example of a mind map on a different topic. Again, a little bit tiny to see, but this is a blank template, basically. You want to start with a main idea. That's a circle in the center, and then map out different ideas. I think we've all done brainstorming before at school or work or in our normal lives. So again, you want to make your big mind map, and then as you're putting your ideas on paper, you want to refine them a little bit more and decide what you actually really want to focus on. So cut out some of those branches on the mind map. So for example, this is more a filled out one. The central idea here, or the topic, could be what impact does screen time have on cognitive function? That's a huge topic, right? Each branch of this mind map, however, represents a specific aspect of this. So for example, you're breaking it down, do I want to talk about young people, old people, whose cognitive development? What kind of screen time? Video games, phones, social media, that kind of thing. So you want to kind of get your ideas all out there, and then that way you can refine them. And then from this brainstorming, I kind of cut off a little branch there and decided to focus on how video games affect the memory and reading comprehension of school children. So we've gone from cognitive development and screen time to a very specific topic. So this will be a much more narrow focus for doing your searches. All right, so 6 minutes to spare, we have come to the end of our webinar, and we do want to know what you're going to take away from this session, and we did want to leave some time for your questions as well. So I'm going to send a link in the chat box to another Jamboard because we want to know what you're taking away from this session as well. So we started off with what are you doing to organize yourself, and now we want to know what you'll take away from this session. So I'm just looking here for our link. But yes, feel free now, as we come to the end of our session, to ask about any questions you may have. Oh, and I believe I cannot find my Jamboard link, unfortunately. So I believe it's, sorry, 1 second. But I'll look for that. Okay, here it is. But that's not helpful for you, so I will put that in the chat box. Okay, sorry. I was all over the place here. So you can ask your questions, and I believe Robin has a bit more to discuss as well. But again, we have our link in the Jamboard. So what are your takeaways? What are you going to try? Are you going to try an Excel sheet? Are you going to try some mind mapping? Do let us know. Okay, so in conclusion, as you fill that out, do remember that organization styles are very personal. Again, we shared some of our techniques, some broader techniques that other people have put forward as educators. So what do you want to choose? You have to choose your own approach. The key thing is make sure it's something you're going to stick to. Make sure that it's sort of intuitive to you or that you're comfortable with. But once you choose a style and approach, do make sure you're consistent. And as Sarah Jean and Robin both pointed out in various places, as you're going, keep writing. Like put your ideas down in notes. Make sure you back things up and make sure you're documenting, again, citations in particular. So the key here is be consistent, find a style that works for you, back everything up. So when I was doing my thesis, I was doing a thesis last year, I had multiple copies. I had them on my personal file on my computer. I had them on an external hard drive. I would email copies to myself. I had them in Zotero. So you make sure you have multiple copies just in case. Okay, so we're going to go let you know where you can go for help with the research process. So the library, of course, offers webinars, as you know, and tutorials. We can help a bit with search strategies. We are pretty overwhelmed with reference right now, so hopefully you can use the materials we have online to support you with technical difficulties with searching, etc. And actually, Robin, really quickly, will pop in to talk about research data management support.
Thanks, Jen. So if you're working on a project that requires you to collect data, so for example, you're interviewing participants, working with archival materials, designing an experiment, or sourcing other data sets from researchers or places like Statistics Canada, or if you have data and want to share it with others, the library offers support and resources for managing and sharing that data. So you can book individual appointments for assistance or review the resources we have put together and linked in the handout. So please don't hesitate to reach out with questions, and there will be an in-depth webinar focused on research data management on February 14th at 1 p.m. Mountain Time. And I'll throw links for research data appointment booking in the LibGuide in the chat here.
Thanks. And I believe Sarah Jean has some support from the Right Site too.
Yeah, thanks. So the Right Site offers writing support in many different ways. You can get one-on-one support through the Writing Dropbox and through real-time appointments. The Writing Dropbox allows you to submit a draft of your assignment and get written feedback from a writing coach. Or you can book a real-time appointment to meet with us on Teams or over the phone. We also have community spaces like the Writing Forum, which takes place every Thursday at 12:30 Mountain. It's just an informal gathering of students and writing coaches, and it gives you a place to ask questions about writing or share your experiences. This week, to match this webinar, our theme is research, reading, and note-taking. So if you think of any questions in between, it'd be great for you to come. It's really fun and relaxed, and you can learn a lot even just by listening. So I really encourage you to come out. Other webinars from the Right Site in the library are listed on our webinar schedule, so please join us to learn more. And I will pop all these links into the chat, and they're also on the handout. We also have a brief survey just to gather your feedback and learn what else you'd like to see from us. So please check that out in the chat as well.
Great. All right. Awesome. Thank you, Sarah Jean. Okay. So we also, again, the handout should have been sent. Crystal had mentioned in chat, if you did not receive the handout, you can email her for that because that has all our links. Yeah. And now we have time for questions if you have them. It's quite the long session and it's packed with information. I think it's so helpful and so useful. So if you don't have questions yet or you're still processing, that's totally fine. As you can see, you can contact us in many ways. Okay. So with that, the handout should be coming to you. It looks slightly different than this, but you should have access to that as well. And thank you all for attending.
Thank you so much. Thank you for doing this for us today, everyone. And I guess, yeah, if there's any questions that come in, feel free to stick around and ask those questions as they come in. I see there's one in there so far. Would the library be able to assist grad students with developing a rapid review extraction tool?
I would suggest not at the moment, no. We are very understaffed at the moment, so we can help with basic research questions, but we would not be able to do something as in-depth as a rapid review extraction tool. And I do not believe I have the expertise for that. Robin, maybe you can suggest something? You probably will want to talk with your instructor, though.
Yeah, I would suggest talking with your instructor because we don't currently have more specialized support for in-depth reviews.
I think I'll stop recording now in case people are camera shy about asking questions.